Hi, I'm Terry Kimball, President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber, and I'm very excited to welcome Jonathon Hill. Welcome.
All right, thank you.
Jonathon is running for the Arizona Corporation Commission, so welcome. So, Jonathon, tell everybody a little bit about why you chose the Arizona Corporation Commission.
Yeah, so the Arizona Corporation Commission is one of the least known but probably most important bodies in Arizona. I chose to run for it because I've always been a strong believer that people with STEM backgrounds, so science, technology, engineering, and math, should run for office and be involved in government much more than they are, just because those areas are such huge parts of our modern world. And so when I saw that people with STEM backgrounds were not stepping up to run for this particular office, where it's particularly needed, that type of expertise, I decided to throw my name into the ring.
Great. Thank you for that. So, what do you feel is the biggest challenge that the Arizona Corporation Commission is facing, and Arizona is facing within the next 5 years?
I would say the biggest concern we're worried about is the impacts of growth. We are not only seeing a population explosion throughout Arizona, but we're also seeing an explosion of energy and water-hungry industries. And so we have to manage that growth very quickly. We don't have a lot of time to, waffle about what we're going to do about it. And those decisions are going to impact Arizona for decades. Once you build utility infrastructure, its lifespan is decades, it's generations. And so I think we're at a really critical, but also very, there's a lot of opportunity coming at this time to make good decisions that will position Arizona well for the rest of the century.
Great. So the Chandler Chamber, here at the Chandler Chamber, we represent about 172,000 employees here within the Chandler area, which is a big representation for business. If elected to the Corporation Commission, how do you see the Corporation Commission, how will you foster a positive relationship between yourself and the Chamber and that business community?
Well, as I was just saying, I think business has to be a huge partner when it comes to deciding what we're going to do with our utilities, because they're not only the main users, in their actual business, but their employees are main users when they go home. And so I think the business community and the chamber in particular has such a huge stake in those decisions that are being made that they have to be at the table, and we have to make sure that the solutions we're coming up with work for them in particular.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. How have you adequately prepared yourself to run for the Corporation Commission? Because you represent the whole state.
Yeah, no, the running for the commission and being on the commission, yeah, you're representing all Arizonans, not just Maricopa County, not just Pima County, but all corners of the state, and in lots of different issues, power, water, natural gas, securities, business licenses. So I've approached it by talking to as many experts as possible, and talking to as many stakeholders, actually going out into the communities, seeing what they need from the commission, not just, what can the commission, do that affects them, but, what do they need from the commission? And I've been really encouraged by the ideas that they've had and how specific they often are. A lot of people have talked about the impacts of regulatory lag at the commission, how it's impacting their business, it's impacting their ability to plan ahead, and also the general uncertainty when it comes to utility rates, these constant rate increases, and the uncertainty that it throws in really like I said, makes planning difficult.
Great, thank you for that. So let's switch gears a little bit and then let's talk about your opinion on energy efficient rules. Do you think they should be a priority here in Arizona?
I think energy efficiency has to be a huge part of our solution. We've seen that with water conservation. Arizona has made huge strides when it comes to water conservation, and that's allowed the growth that we've seen throughout the state for the last 30, 40 years, which just would not have been possible without water conservation efforts. And so I think energy efficiency is the same thing, just on the energy side. And so, we talked about growth in Arizona, especially these power-hungry industries. And so we can provide for them either by increasing generation or a combination of generation and energy efficiency. If we can reduce the demand of existing customers, which also brings their bills down, there's more energy left over for growth. And so that prevents us from having to immediately build these very expensive power plants.
So how will you ensure the cost of utilities remains affordable for all Arizonans, whether it's residential and or business?
I think the commission needs to take a much harder look at the balance that they've struck. Their constitutional authority and duty is to balance the needs of the utilities to stay financially healthy, but also the needs of the consumers to also remain financially healthy. It's a symbiotic relationship. If one side is suffering, both sides are going to suffer. And so I think the commission has, in the last couple terms, has erred a little too far on the sides of guaranteeing that the utility companies are financially healthy, which they are. But I think that's come at too much of the expense of consumers, which have seen rate increases on power, water, and natural gas just repeatedly over the last couple terms. And I think that's really become a structural issue that's weighing on consumers and honestly preventing a lot of potential growth that we have here in Arizona.
So let's talk a little bit about how do you think Arizona should maintain a diverse energy portfolio?
I think the best way when it comes to your diversity of your energy portfolio is to simply allow the different energy generation technologies to compete on an even playing field. And what I mean by that is that when requests for proposals go out asking for additional power generation options, we don't put our thumb on the scale and say it has to be a certain type of power generation. We don't put little tweaks in there that sort of shift the balance from one technology to the other, but also take into account the cost of fuel. Because when we build certain types of power generation, natural gas, coal, even biomass, you're signing yourself up and all of Arizona up for decades of purchasing that fuel. And so I think that needs to be taken into account properly, and then allow these different power generation technologies to compete, because ultimately the goal is to lower rates as much as possible for consumers. It shouldn't be about the political ideologies of one party over another or one group over another. The goal for everybody should be to keep rates low and to go with whatever technology or technologies accomplish that goal.
So I know that we've had a short period of time and we've kind of jumped all over the board with some of the questions. Is there anything that I may not have asked you that you feel is important for the voters to know, or just additional information that you want to share?
Well, I guess one thing I would add is just that I think it's really important that the commissioners have technical experience. There are 5 commissioners. There's a relatively small staff at the commission, and so they don't always have the ability to bring in outside experts on a moment's notice. We need to have that technical capability on the commission itself, and so that's something I hope to bring. Both on the engineering side, where I started out, when it comes to power generation, water distribution, but also I've switched tracks sort of halfway through my career to geological sciences, and so I think bringing that to the commission would also be valuable when it comes to our groundwater issues. You know, people throughout Arizona, as I've traveled around, are really worried about groundwater and its sustainability. You know, is it going to be here for the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, or is my property going to become worthless because suddenly it doesn't have any water attached to it? And then the last thing I would add is just encouraging people to become informed voters and educated voters when it comes to the commission, because this is, it doesn't get a lot of press. It's not very high up on the ballot, but like we've talked, you know, it impacts everybody at these fundamental levels. You know, how much you're paying every month for your power, your water, your gas. It's, you know, direct pocketbook issues, you know, about cost of living. And so if you're concerned about any of these issues, the commission is where the rubber hits the road on these. It's not so much the legislature, it's not so much the governor's office, it's the commission. And that's, for better or worse, one of the unique aspects of living in Arizona. You know, we have this sort of unofficial fourth branch of government. And so I would just encourage people to become more informed about the candidates, the office, and, you know, really think about what direction they think Arizona should go on these issues.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Jonathon Hill, candidate for Arizona Corporation Commission, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.